Oh boy, we're going to be going into another big discussion. So, I am familiar with this guy. He seems like a really cool dude. He seems like he's got a real good head on his shoulders, smart guy. But what caught my attention with this video was the title. Why Power Creep in Honkai Star Rail isn't real yet. But he's only throwing that yet in there because he anticipates that it might become a problem. But my concern is that he's saying it's not a problem presently. But there's another reason why I wanted to watch this video, and that is in the description below. You see, EO here breaks down his thoughts and opinions on why power creep in Honkai Star Rail isn't real, at least not yet. And this idea started from Tectone's recent opinion about Honkai Star Rail's meta regarding Apocalyptic Shadow. Essentially, his thesis here spawns from the video that I reacted to a little while ago. Just a couple days ago. So I want to see where he drew his conclusion from and how it compares to my conclusion. So without further ado, I want to see where EO is coming from when it comes to power creep in Honkai Star Rail.
There's a lot of talk going around the Honkai Star Rail community that HSR is entering power creep, whether that be from the light cones, the characters, the new characters coming out, and any future characters coming out for that matter, or simply in-game mode and max rewards cannot be completed. I don't even know how to introduce myself. Bad take EO. I have EO takes, quote unquote. I'm here to tell you guys why power creep is basically a lie and it doesn't exist. But saying it that way sounds a little harsh, so let me explain.
But on a real note, HSR is becoming what we all knew it was going to become, which is have this character or you lose. And it kind of sucks. It's a shame, but it really is getting to that issue where have this character for this game mode or you lose. Or you don't get max rewards, right? It's pretty irritating. Happens if you release 2 characters every patch. Is what it is. If you disagree, I would love to know why.
What you guys just heard.
And I disagree with Tectone's take. Because to a degree, you don't need that character. And in fact, in my last video where I actually discussed that, I proved my point, which is that you don't need Firefly. You don't even need Boot Hill. You can beat Argenti's side with Sushong, and then later on, thanks to a commenter on that video, I went and tested Shui on the Cocolia side, and I was able to beat Cocolia with a Shui team on the Cocolia side.
There was a clip from Tectone which pretty much originated this entire conversation, which I personally think this discussion is a really good topic to have. And I mean that genuinely for a number of reasons. But TLDR, it's good because it'll open the eyes of a lot of new players in the community, as well as some of the players who would consider themselves veterans that think they're doing something great and then they're not doing something great. And I have examples for that. I want to break this down into a couple of categories, a couple being maybe like 4, 5, pretty sure it's 5. Those categories being free-to-play / low-spending casuals. This one actually came from Tectone. The community's blatant problems, gotta add an S after that. Vertical versus horizontal investment, something that the community sucks at doing. Then the EO take, power creep isn't real. And then lastly, I'm gonna wrap all this together in some examples of practicing exactly what I preach. So without further ado, let's kick this off. We're gonna start with free-to-play / low-spending casuals, which to be fair, this might sound a little aggressive, but I don't mean it that way. I'm a nice guy. I'm not. Anytime someone says they're a nice guy, dude, they're not a nice guy. Just, yeah. Off rip, casual players should expect casual results. There is no.
So here is where EO is going to be probably staring down my perspective, because I consider myself in the light spender category. EO here is going to be really hitting home with me.
No if, and, or buts about that one statement. Putting in casual work gets you casual results. Obviously, there's going to be that one outlier that says something along the lines of, well, actually, I've played the game for 1 hour a day, every day. I have pulled every single character on the first 10 pull, by the way, and they're E6, all of them. I actually have every single light cone in the game, and I can clear anything on auto. Day one, free to play, by the way. And to that I say, fuck. But on a serious note,
Okay, so at that point, no. If anybody is saying they have gotten every character and they've E6'd every character, no, that's a well. But with that to the side, as someone who is a light spender player, I can, and granted this is more so probably my time investment, can clear everything in the game. And that is probably partially due to my time investment into the game. If someone is playing casually, and by that definition, let's say, spends just a couple hours in the game and then goes off and does something else, that kind of casual player, I think that speaks true to what EO is saying, that they shouldn't expect any real high-end rewards because they only spent a casual amount of investment. And so I think that's what he's saying there, is that if you also just spend a casual amount of time, you will also just get casual amounts of rewards.
ignoring that, there is no feasible reason anyone should be thinking if I put in the least amount of effort, I deserve the maximum amount of rewards for everything in the game. It's literally just greed and FOMO combined in one. From that point, we can actually move on to the free-to-play audience, which I will separate from the low spenders just for a moment. The concepts of what I'm about to speak on are about the same, but spenders have money to fix their mistakes. As a free-to-play, it is 100% up to you on whether or not you can progress through in-game or not in HSR. Some things are not your fault, like losing a 50-50, but it is your fault when you lose that 50-50 because you were building pity on a banner you didn't need. As a free-to-play, your resources are the most important thing in the game. Most of you that are vocal about this, at the very least, are also vocal about how you either A, don't know what to do so you're just doing anything, or B, don't care about meta and you pull for what you want. These are what we call waifu hunters. Now, for as many times that I've said this, Honkai Star Rail is not Genshin Impact. How many times do I need to repeat? Even when Zenless comes out, Zenless Zone Zero is not Genshin Impact. Some of the thought processes, the mentality that we have from Genshin Impact have bled their way into other gacha game communities. And I promise you, it's only Genshin Impact that those things are normal. Other gacha games, it's not normal. Star Rail showed us this in the first month of all the creators getting to MOC for their very first time, that this was not that type of game. Now, I've preached to the heavens about why light cones are important and how
I really honestly agree with that. I actually truly do agree with that. Because, I mean, if you take all the points that I have made and other people have made too in the past about how we're in Genshin, I mean, think about it. The only thing in Genshin that's worth even putting any effort into is Spiral Abyss. So if that's the only thing you ever put any investment into, then realistically, you don't have to try that hard. So therefore, you can have the mentality of just being quote unquote a waifu hunter. And so if you were trying to be a free-to-play player in Honkai Star Rail, or even coming up with Zenless Zone Zero, you're going to be punished for that if that waifu you want doesn't turn out to be that good. And that's why, to a degree, now that I start putting more dots together, why the devs for Genshin Impact didn't care, for example, when Dia turned out to be shit. Star Rail would have been just raked over the coals for that, for putting out a character that turned out to be dog shit, and anyone who spent the money because they wanted to waifu hunt for Dia would have got burned because they got a bad character, a character that will not be able to help them progress in content like Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, and now Apocalyptic Shadow, or so on and so forth. So yeah, I honestly think that's a really good take, because that only exists in Genshin. Only in Genshin can you waifu hunt and not worry about getting burned later by meta, because meta really doesn't matter in Genshin.
beneficial they are. Not even just signature light cones. and a loud number of you continue to be adamant about not doing it. You don't want to put on the like cone banner. You don't want to get like cones. You don't want to go out of your way to do whatever it is. You just want characters. And I go over this further in the next segment, but you guys have an addiction and you do not want the cure. Where'd my light go? A number of players just want to collect waifus or husbandos, and that part's cool. Stop complaining about how you can't put Welt on the team with Imagine Dragon and then clear content. Some of you still don't understand how to play the game, let alone build a team, and you insist that the game is easy to just click left skill here, do this skill here, and then do ultimate when button go flash. For the last 4 patches, I've proven multiple times how the enemies were getting stealth buff, metas were shifting, and the game was quickly moving away from just hypercarry team comps. I gave solid advice on what to do to prepare, even if you already weren't. And those of you who listened are always telling me how I drastically helped your account. Thank you for that. The rest of you who could just not fathom that I knew what I was talking about started the whole bad take EO nonsense. But to round this category off, low spenders. You guys practically have zero excuse beyond just not knowing what you're doing. You're not investing properly, or you have horribly bad luck like me, which leads me into my next subject, the community's blatant problem.
Now that he's going into community, I'll kind of go into his whole take on free-to-play and casual players. And in fact, I would actually say that's a subcategory, because casual mindset versus more hobbyist mindset. So free-to-play players, 100%, you can also kind of divide that into a section too. Free-to-play players that want to actually take the game seriously in a hobbyist mindset, or free-to-play players that want to take the just be waifu or husbando collectors, but they don't want to spend the money. Yes, if you are a free-to-play player who's just being a waifu collector, like for example using the Genshin Impact mindset, you're going to get burned because you're just half-ass playing. You're not trying to get the characters that actually will help your account. And with that being said, if you're just going through the waifu and husbando collection and you want to play whatever character you want to play, that's fine. There's going to be some parts in the game that you can actually get away with that. But if you're going to go anywhere near harder content, you are going to get burned, and you did it to yourself. And the same thing goes for light spenders who have that same mindset too. They're going to get burned because they're not doing what they need to actually benefit their account if they're wanting to get into harder content. But if you are a hobbyist player of either of those variations, free-to-play or light spender, then honestly, you should be able to get far into the game as long as you're applying logic and you're applying resource management. And honestly, if you're a light spender, spending your money wisely, but you should be doing that no matter what type of player you are. Always spend your money wisely. So, but for the most part, I think he was on point with his take, and I actually, for the most part, agree with him. I think he's pretty much on point here.
Got an add an S. For months, you guys have been lied to, and it's become worse for new players who entered the game in version 2.0. Earlier this year, I released a video explaining how HSR was becoming more akin to Genshin Impact in regards to team building, where it would be more about the physical archetype / team comp and less about putting 3 harmonies on one team than buffing 1 DPS. Now, a loud amount of the community has been telling players that hypercarry is the best way to play the game, and most of the time, the only way you should play the game. Due to
certain characters, you can kind of get away with that. Like, for example, you can get away with a hyper carry Jing Liu. You can get away with a hyper carry Imbiber Lune. You can even get away with sort of a hyper carry Acheron. But in a way, I think the game is kind of getting away from hyper carry and is more so leaning toward actually like synergistic teams. But let's see where he's going.
It supports being easy to build, quote unquote, and shared amongst teams. That is a primary reason you see so many claims about if you don't have X character, you cannot do ABC. Players don't even know their 4-star options or how to build whatever team archetype they want, simply because there is a lack of research and misinformation shoved down their throat the moment they turn on the game. I started a brand new free-to-play account just before version 2.0 arrived in order to fully take on the free-to-play experience. By the end of 2.1, I was able to fully complete both an Acheron team and an IPC emergency team with 1 signature light cone for Acheron. At that time, I completed MOC up to 12 as well as Pure Fiction. max rewards before putting a pause on the account due to Wuthering Waves coming out. Now for me, it was a good challenge, but still doable with good investment. Mind you, I lost 3 50/50s during the entire process, preventing me from getting anybody else's signature light cones. My point is that I've practiced what I've preached just to make sure I wasn't telling y'all some bullshit that you couldn't achieve. Gacha players have an addiction to pulling the new shiny toy instead of making sure the last shiny toy they just bought remains shiny. Zila, Silverwolf, even Himiko or Claire are basically phase 1 units and are still some of the most downplayed units by the community. To this day, Zila clears any form of content competitively against what you think are the top 5 DPS characters, and you still have people telling you she has fallen off. She's a bad character. Worst DPS. She's obviously not the worst DPS in the game, but you get my point. Silver is a literal walking cheat code, and she has people advising you to skip her anytime she has a rerun. Himiko is a standard character that many of you have lost a 50/52, yet less than 5% of the player base know how to play the character properly and understand her role. Meanwhile, she fits in now 3 distinct team roles, stomps on 2 in-game modes consistently, and the current MOC for free. Most of the excuses here aren't that you don't have something, it's that you don't want to use it, and for that, we get into vertical versus horizontal investment, which is...
Okay, so I think there's some truth to a good chunk of what he said, and then there are some things I disagree with. So 100% there's definitely characters that still are strong, even to this day since the beginning of Honkai Star Rail. For example, and I'll actually agree with him on this point, when it comes to some of the initial 5-star characters, the standard 5-star characters, there are some that are actually still very strong to this day. For example, Himiko, who was shit on when the game started, she is actually very strong today. Obviously, Pure Fiction actually really helps her out because she is amazing in Pure Fiction. But now that break effect and weakness break is a thing in the game now, like more of a prominent thing in the game now, Himiko actually gets a huge buff from that just because Himiko is synergistic with weakness break. But that's one example where I agree with him. Himiko is still really good. Welt is still really good. I will stand on the fact that Silverwolf is still a great character in the game because she applies so much debuffs to the enemies. Even Jingyu Wan is still really good because that man keeps on getting buffs just about every other update. But there's one character that I will disagree with him with, and that is Seela. Seela has such a bad, terrible kit and at the time, Seela was good just because we had nothing else going on in the game. And plus, Seela was actually a really good character to use in the story and also for farming because she could just go non-stop. Seela gets a kill, then Seela is able to pop off. But the problem with Seela is that what does she do when the enemies are too tanky for her to take out? Because, yes, there are going to be enemies in this game, nowadays especially, where enemies are just going to get harder and more tanky, and that means Seela is going to have to try harder to take those enemies out. And not to mention, her first passive is absolutely useless. Her first passive just allows her to be harder to hit. That's useless against enemies that do AoE, and just about every enemy in the game does some kind of AoE. Also to mention that Seela only starts to get decently good when you are able to highly invest with her. You have to literally get Seela to a point where she is perfect to where she is able to pop off. And in my opinion, Seela is definitely one of those characters that has just fallen off. But for the most part, I agree with him.
Is honestly really easy to explain. TLDR, both of these should be utilized throughout your account, but not at the same time. Earlier, I mentioned how players just make really poor investments like hypercarry everything or only deal pickle. And while those are typically bad decisions, they do have some benefits through vertical investment. Vertical investment means you build onto a set team or archetype, which is perfect for MOC, any of it, doesn't matter. This is what allows many players, free-to-play or spenders, to brute force content. And you're probably going to hear that term a lot, or you've already seen that term get used a lot. Characters like Dill Pickle, Jing Liu, even Acheron all have some form of brute forcing their way through things. And it's a big reason why a lot of people say, hey man, this character's top tier, one of the top tier DPSs, best DPS in the game, because they brute force off elemental content. So a great example of these characters would be an E2 Dill, an E2 Acheron, or even an E2 Firefly. These specific characters are so strong that you just don't need anything else. But one, this isn't me saying only these three are good to vertically invest in, and two, I'm not promoting you to E2 anything. What I am encouraging is building onto a set team near completion, then moving on to another team, and that in itself is significantly more beneficial than collecting every fucking thing that shows up in the banner. This is also why I don't agree that 2 characters a banner are a problem. I think it's only a problem for addicts. Let's briefly refer back to Zila, who needs some of the least vertical investment possible. E0S0 Zila is easily one of the best DPSs in the game by a long shot. Her kit stands the test of time, and building a team around her makes it so that you will always have at least her and the team to clear something. And again, specifically with her. Adding S1 or even E1 improves that process by taking away some of the grind in your relic farming. Now you start the process of the team. Do you want Sparkle, Bronya, Robin? Take your pick. Next, grab a Ting Yun and get a great sustain. Silverwolf can help guarantee quantum weakness, but we've already proven Zila kinda doesn't care if they're weak or not. There you have it, you're done. Now once this team is complete, instead of adding another fucking DPS that's going to share the exact same units, a smart player would build an entirely new archetype to begin their horizontal investment. DOT, Break, Acheron, Freeze, whatever it is. Your job for your own account is to figure out what the best course of action is to hit as many targets as possible for as long as possible. You do not have to pull every character, signature light cone, or farm the perfect relics. You just need to make smarter investments with the time you choose to give the game. And finally, we get into the true EO take of today's video.
I actually, for the most part, agree with him on this take. I was just really giving him shit about Zila. So, if EO, if you ever watch this, I actually agree with your opinion. I just disagree with your thought of Zila. But I do agree with you on the premise of what you're saying. Yes. And this actually goes back to what I'm saying about free-to-play and casual players needing to just manage their resources. And part of that 100% is who you invest in. If you are building a dot-focused team and you are a light spender or free-to-play player, and therefore you need to really resource manage, focus in on just dot characters and maybe one other type of team. And yes, let's not forget, there is pure fiction. But remember, you're also a free-to-play player and light spender player. So you need to also understand that off the rip, you're not going to be able to accomplish everything in the game. It's going to take time. That was how it was in the beginning of Honkai Star Rail. It took time for me to be able to get to the end of Memory Chaos because my account wasn't ready yet. I needed to invest more time. And that's what you have to understand as a free-to-play and light spender player, is that everything takes time. So yes, 100% I agree with his take. You need to go team by team after you get, like, let's say 2 teams invested in. If you got a DOT team, invest in DOT characters. If you got a follow-up attack team, keep in mind to invest in follow-up attack teams. And when you're ready to actually invest in pure fiction, invest in some erudition characters like Himiko. If you get Himiko, bam, you're already pretty much set for at least one half of pure fiction. And keep in mind, destruction and dot characters do pretty well in pure fiction as well too. So I agree 100% with this take. You will do fine as long as you get certain teams set and good.
Power creep is not real. And I mean that with my whole ass chest. Power creep, real power creep, that's a game like Fire Emblem Heroes where they quite literally release one character one month and then the very next character replaces them plus someone else entirely. When a character becomes completely unusable, when an entire game mode becomes unclearable based off this character, when this entire team archetype is just straight up irrelevant, that's when we have actual power creep in the game. Honkai Star.
All right, so I'm gonna let him cook. I'm gonna let him cook. I'm gonna let him cook.
RO making the game more in your face about building archetypes is not power creep. In fact, I think it's a really good way at getting you to explore more of the game's mechanics. There is nothing in the game currently that requires you to have X string of characters or you cannot clear it. Now, I do believe there are must pulls, 3 to be exact, but by no means does it equal you can't clear something without them. These are my must pull decisions and what I believe are must pulls because what I value in the game. And those must pulls being justified because they create an easy way out for the lacking players. I'll list them, but I'm not gonna go over them in this video because it's already long enough. I'm gonna release a whole separate video explaining later on my reasonings, but the characters being Ruan Mei, Silverwolf, and Acheron or Firefly. Those are the only characters in the game I consider a must pull currently. The latter meaning you can pick your poison since both aren't needed. You just need one. At this point, if you've made it to the end of the video or if you just skipped here, I've got a multitude of examples that I want to show off. All of
Okay, so before he jumps into that, I want to give my take on his opinion of power creep. So, power creep, he is, I believe, more so referring to more egregious examples of power creep. And yes, for his Fire Emblem Heroes example, that is just egregious power creep by the devs. That is just bullshit. And so I think for Honkai Star Rail, I do think it's not it's not anywhere egregious. But if you compare, just for comparison's sake, Acheron as a DPS, just straight up, just as the bare bones DPS, to, let's say, a Seela. Acheron beat Seela by miles, and that is statistically true. I've even seen the damage numbers and everything. Seela does not compare to Acheron whatsoever when it comes to numbers, and Seela does not compare to Acheron when it comes to how well each character performs in their own right. Acheron can take out waves of enemies. But if you wanted to do more of a honest comparison, we could compare Dr. Ratio to Seela. Both hunt characters, therefore both single target. And Dr. Ratio, statistically and by the numbers, Dr. Ratio is considered one of the best single target DPSs out of all the single target DPSs in the game. And also, Dr. Ratio doesn't have to rely on getting a kill. He can get his follow-up attacks and still do consistent amounts of really good damage without the reliance of getting one kill. Therefore, that is, objectively speaking, means that Dr. Ratio has more uptime on his kit compared to Seela, whose kit is not active unless she gets a kill. So, my point being is that I don't think power creep is a part of the game in the most egregious types of examples. In fact, it's nowhere near as bad as even Tectone is saying, because I was able to disprove that in my last video. So I think it's somewhere more so in the middle. It's nowhere near, like I said, as bad as what Tectone is saying, but I also think that power creep is a thing in Honkai Star Rail, but it's nowhere near to the point where it's worth really considering unless you just look at Seela. But to EO's credit, he can make Seela work. But I think that's just more so justification for power creep not being egregious. It just means that you have to try harder to make Seela work. So, like I said, I'm more so in the middle of this take. I think power creep is kind of a thing, but it's nowhere near as bad as what Tectone said in his little video.
this sprang from the tweet that I made using a video quote from Techie about Honkai Star Rail. Shortly after that, Tectone wanted to make sure that I was considering his stance on the issue was from the largest demographic of players. Those players being free-to-play or low-spending casuals who do not have Giga Sweat relics and every signature light cone. For that reason, I went into Apocalyptic Shadow, which is the origin of this entire quote and where all this came from. And following his criteria, as well as some even more strict ones, I took on the challenge. I limited myself to only 2 limited banner characters per team, or what could be available to a majority of free-to-play players. Only 1 signature light cone per team, and at most 1 Eidolon, regardless of it being limited or standard, though all of my units are E0, S0 except Silverwolf. I chose her E1 for this because it provided the least value against this specific limit test. This way, I could provide examples for both vertical and horizontal investment without stretching the limit. As of June 14th, 2024, over 99.8% of players own Dr. Ratio, which allowed me to consider him for the team. Himiko is the second most owned standard banner character, sitting just under 80%. So I chose her based on statistics. Now I can build my teams. First up was Silverwolf, paired with Dr. Ratio, Sui Yi, and Aventurine. I originally cleared with Topaz and Ratio, but then I realized all of them on the same team were missing damage and I was still using 3 limited banner characters, which I didn't want to do. Silver was my unit of choice because she gives Ratio his debuffs, forces weakness implant on anything. She also gets her ultimate fairly quickly with or without E1 and does a big chunk on toughness meter without Mei, which was crucial to what I was getting at, or rather the thing that I was proving with this particular team. After that, I picked up Sui Yi instead of a Harmony buffer because most buffers in this mode are just ass. You gain nothing from buffing damage when the enemy has almost 100% resistance plus elemental lockout mechanics if you take too long. I needed a strong sustain and units that could provide decent to high damage on their own without a Harmony unit. Sui Yi's incredible niche at colorless breaking is a godsend here, and the best part of my choice is that she's free. Aventurine being my second choice for my limited banner character as well as my sustain, making this super easy due to the endless shields, and it allowed me to focus on beating down weaknesses as fast as possible. Throughout all of this, there was another team that I tried and found some success with, using Zila and Bailu. Under the same exact conditions of this limit test, I used this team, and while I did clear it, I didn't clear it in a timely fashion due to Bailu not having any form of cleanse. On paper, the team still worked, but because Bailu just allowed everyone to get frozen or imprisoned, it made it that much longer. Like, I didn't die because she's like goated at healing, but she also allowed my team to pretty much get CC'd at least 60 times, and I wasn't going to show that off. Now,
And right there, even though I'm actually very interested in how he went about this, and right there is more so an example of my point, that power creep is a thing when it comes to certain characters. Seela, when you compare her to other main damage dealers. And in this case, Bailu, when you compare her to other healers. Or just straight up sustain characters. Every sustain character, other than Natasha, has pretty much power creeped Bailu. Bailu is a trash healer just because of what this my man EO here just said. Bailu doesn't offer any cleanse whatsoever. So, with that being said, that is an example of power creep. That's an example of power creep when it comes to healer and sustain characters. Is it bad? No. But is it kind of obvious in some circumstances? 100%. Like I said, it goes back to my point where I think power creep is a thing, but not nearly as bad as what Tectone is saying.
I got used to the run, it became smooth enough for me to recreate multiple times. Sui and Zila worked amazingly together, and Silverwolf made it so that I could force resurgence triggers whenever I wanted, or flat out interrupt Japard before getting his shields off, which is a big part of the game. Coco wasn't even the biggest problem either, it was him. For the next side, I knew I was going to have fun with this one. Ruan Mei, Gallagher, Himiko, and Harmony MC. I really wanted to show off Hybrid Himiko, and boy did she do work. Her Robot Jones talent flat out wiped the shields with ease, and because of HMC, whenever they were broken, she hit for like 50k a tick. Mei was chosen because, because Mei. I really shouldn't have to explain why I picked
No, you
Mei.
don't have to explain that,
If I
man.
did need a reason, it's because she's currently on the banner, and I wanted another reason to show people why she's practically my choice for the #1 must pull if it existed. But that doesn't mean you need her. I even fact checked this by using Asta instead of Ruan Mei. Now, if you notice, my Himiko barely has over 100% break effect. Mei gave her a big boost, helped delay enemies to stay broken for longer, and even put in her own stacks of damage by breaking the ice shield. For my sustain, Gallagher is just that guy. There's zero reason none of you shouldn't be building him. He is quite literally the best free healer in the game, and his Eidolons only make him more busted. Gallagher plus Himiko alone was enough to smash through Argenti's shields, which is why I said earlier, I really didn't need Mei. And that's why I'm like, I could have just added another Harmony unit like Astra or Robin, but why would I do that when the break team is one of the most perfect comps currently in the game? Not
And 100% true. And in fact, in my video that I showed him when I was actually talking about Tectone's take, is that I didn't even have to use Himiko. I beat this dude with just Xu Shang with actually the same exact team. Like literally just take out Himiko and put Xu Shang. And Xu Shang did work. And I came out of that with just a nearly perfect score.
Not even because of the damage output. It's just good. All of them are very synergistic. Replacing one break DPS character with another break DPS character takes the least amount of effort compared to doing this with any other DPS. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't even know if that's a pun. So after all that was said and done, this was fun as fuck. I enjoyed the challenge a lot, and I think Apocalyptic Shadow brings some serious heat to the table because it's basically its own meta. You cannot play this in-game mode the same way you play MOC or even Pure Fiction. All of these little buffs, notes, and enemy patterns changing the way the enemies work, all of that matters. When you do what significantly helps you clear fast or slow, and how you build the team is significantly important too. The definition of fuck around and find out. To wrap Apocalyptic Shadow up, here are some recommendations for the current Stormwind Night phase that I've tested and cleared over 3,300 points with. Firefly, Boot Hill, Sushan, Shui Yi, Chapard, Pela, Silverwolf, Acheron, Himiko, Ratio, Topaz, Argenti, Zila, Jing Yuan, Asta, Bronya, and a lot more. Moral of the story is that the game is not the problem, and pulling certain characters is also not your problem. Obviously, you can make an argument for one character being Ron Mei, but I proved it both times, and I've proved it in any other video. You don't need Mei to clear content. Mei just makes it super fucking easy for people who lack the ability to do things in the game. Now, respectfully, because this originated from Techie, you have a busted ass account, brother. For a free-to-play plus player, you got a lot, big dog. You do. I think, realistically, I don't think it's characters that you're having issues with. I think right now it's simply time invested. I know you do a lot. I know you are a great creator and you're always on stream. You be in the gym and you be taking care of yourself. You got to have that personal time. You don't have time to be playing Star Rail all day, which you don't need to play it all day. That's fine too, but you get my point. Point being is that with a little bit more investment or proper guidance, stop listening to your Twitch chat, please. You can clear whatever you want. You have all the characters that you need to clear, bro. You have Acheron, for goodness sake. And then you just get Firefly. There's zero reason. You don't.
And I 100% I agree with the core, the soul of what EO is saying here. You don't need certain characters. You only need certain characters when the team that you're building needs those characters, or if that character improves the team that you've been working on. And it's not really a need. It's more so, hey, this character helps with break teams. I should probably invest in that character to improve my break team. So it's not really a need. It's more so, does this block fit with the foundation that I have been building? And 100% that actually ties perfectly well to what I'm about to say, which is it's all about resource management. And if you are managing your resources, managing your account, and building the right teams that have great synergy, you can do fine. That's why the teams that he made worked out really well, because they synergized with each other and also synergized with the content that was being played. To Tectone's defense, the man is always busy. The man does own and run businesses, so he doesn't have all the time in the world. If he was able to get down into the trenches and really zero in on his account, because he is right, I've seen Tectone's account. Tectone's account is really, really, really good. He would be able to probably clear these game modes with relative ease, and without these characters like Acheron or Firefly, he could beat these like I said, with characters I used or the characters EO used. So I 100% really agree with the core of what EO is saying here.
Don't have an excuse, but it is what it is. Anyhow, guys, let me know if you enjoyed today's video. Do leave a like, comment down below. This is another big boy video that I did not plan on making, but I think it just sprung up after seeing everything because, again, this discussion was really good. I really enjoyed having this type of like think piece going on with this particular topic, and I would love if we had more topics like this in the community. Not even just Star Rail. Bro, when Zillis comes out, catch me outside because I'm arguing with everybody, dog. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Smell you later.
But yes, actually a really good video. I actually 100% enjoyed watching EO's video here. He kept my interest for all these 19 minutes and 40-ish seconds. But really good video. And the thing is, I absolutely agree with EO, even on the point of I love thought-provoking content. That was literally why I wanted to watch this video, because just by the title, I was invested into what he was going to be suggesting. And for the most part, like I said, I agree with him. And even the things that I do disagree with him on, I don't even think it's really that big of a deal. Like, we have just a slight disagreement about Sela. We have a slight disagreement on the effects of power creep. And like I said, I just kind of like am right there in the middle of Tectone and EO. In fact, I would actually say I'm more so on EO side than I am on Tectone side. But really great video. And I'm going to leave a link in the description below like I always do. So definitely check out EO's video. Hit that like button for him. Hit that subscribe button for him. And while you're at it, hit that like button for my video. Hit that subscribe button for me. Helps us grow the community over here. Helps us grow the channel. And honestly, a really great dude. I really enjoyed EO. He seems like a really cool guy. A guy I could probably have a lot of informative and intellectual conversation with. So definitely cool dude. And with that being said, thank you guys for hanging out. You guys have been great, and I'll catch you guys later.